Tonight, I'm going to tell you something most people never discover, not because it's complicated, but because it's too simple for the fearful mind to accept. There is a hidden reason your life keeps repeating certain scenes, and it isn't bad luck, and it isn't time. It's a place inside you you return to without noticing. And before this ends, you'll recognize that place so clearly, you'll never be ruled by it again. I want to tell you a secret that doesn't feel like a secret until the moment you finally see it. Your life has never been waiting to begin. It has been waiting to be recognized. And when you recognize it, when you stop begging the world for permission, something ancient in you rises, quiet and sovereign, like a king returning to a throne no one could ever truly steal. Because what you call manifesting was never meant to feel like wrestling the universe. It was never meant to feel like chasing signs, forcing outcomes, negotiating with time. The deepest power you have is not in effort, it is in alignment, in the effortless gravity of a decided inner state. There is a version of you who is already living the life you can barely admit you want. Not because you earned it, not because you became perfect, not because you finally eliminated every fear, but because you remembered who you are, awareness itself, still, luminous, untouched by the noise of the world. And this awareness is not a spectator, it is the author. So before we go any further, let yourself soften. Feel the room you're in, yes, but feel what's behind it. Feel the quiet witness inside you that has watched every season of your life come and go. That witness has never been broken, never been lacking, never been late. And if you stay with me to the final words of this narration, you will discover why the very thing you think is missing is actually the doorway that has been following you the entire time, waiting for you to turn around and step through. Now, you've been taught that life is something outside of you, that circumstances are the real world, and your inner world is just imagination, just thoughts, just wishes, just hope. But those who understood the deeper law, Neville, Abdullah, Murphy, didn't treat imagination as fantasy. They treated it as the first reality, the workshop, the womb, the place where the invisible becomes certain before it becomes visible. And here is where people misunderstand. They hear imagination creates, and they start straining. They start clenching the jaw of the mind. They start repeating affirmations like they're trying to hammer a nail through stone. They start watching the outside world like a guard watching a prison yard, searching for proof, searching for movement, searching for confirmation. But the law does not respond to anxiety. It responds to identity. You do not get what you want. You get what you are being. And what you are being is not your job title, not your bank account, not your relationship status. What you are being is the invisible posture you live from, the inner sentence you keep repeating, the emotional atmosphere you call normal, the self-concept you return to when no one is watching. This is why effort-based manifestation exhausts people, because it tries to change the world without changing the one who is looking at the world. So let's make this simple in a way that feels like breath. Imagine there is an eye at the top of everything, an inner eye, an inner lamp. Not an eye made of flesh, but the seeing that sees, the awareness that knows you're here. The silent I behind every thought, behind every reaction, behind every memory. That I is not your problems. That I is not your history. That I is not your fear. That I is the light by which fear is noticed. And when that I becomes single, when it stops splitting itself between what it wants and what it fears, between hope and doubt, between tomorrow and regret, your whole inner world fills with light. Not because you forced it, because you stopped scattering yourself. You felt this before, even if only for a moment. A quiet moment where you suddenly knew what mattered. A moment where other people's opinions couldn't reach you. A moment where clarity arrived like sunrise. No argument, no struggle, just certainty. That certainty is not a rare event. It is your natural home. But the world is loud, and the loudness is not only outside, news, opinions, trends, expectations. The loudness is also inside, the learned voices, the inherited beliefs, the old emotional reflexes that jump up like guards whenever you dare to imagine something beautiful. And so the teaching is not ignore everyone. The teaching is subtler. Don't let the noise drown your inner voice. Noise isn't evil. Noise is simply what is unrelated to your vision, what is unrelated to your true direction, what pulls you away from the quiet intelligence within. Because you were given two gifts, mind and speech, not as toys, not as weapons against yourself, as instruments of creation. Mind, to choose an inner reality. Speech, to declare it into form. But if those gifts are used unconsciously, they become like a wild horse dragging you through old terrain. The mind repeats what it has been trained to repeat. The tongue speaks what it has been conditioned to fear. And life mirrors it, not as punishment, but as obedience. The subconscious is power without direction. It does not judge, it does not argue, it does not check if your beliefs are kind or cruel. It simply expresses what has been impressed upon it, what has been accepted as true, what has been emotionally rehearsed, what has been repeatedly lived in the imagination. So if the subconscious is power without direction, the question becomes, who gives it direction? The conscious mind can try, and often it does, through willpower, through control, through forcing a new habit. But willpower alone is like trying to hold back the ocean with your hands. You might manage a wave, but the tide keeps coming. There is a higher faculty in you, a higher chamber. Call it the superconscious, call it the God mind, call it infinite intelligence, call it the divine design written into your being. It is the realm of perfect ideas, ideas that feel like destiny when they arrive. Not destiny as fate, but destiny as resonance. The click of something that fits you so perfectly, it feels like it was always yours. And here is the strange part. Those perfect ideas often appear first as too good to be true. They flash across the mind like a door opening into a palace, and the conditioned self whispers, "Not you, not now, not in this life." But the whisper is not truth. It is old programming protecting an old identity. Listen closely. The dream you desire is not random. The desire itself is evidence of the pattern within you. Like hunger is evidence of food. Like thirst is evidence of water. Your desire is not a cruel joke. It is a compass. And what you are actually seeking, beneath the specific forms, money, love, health, freedom, purpose, is the feeling of being aligned with your true nature, fulfillment, wholeness, a life that feels like you. So here's the first inner pivot. You stop judging by appearances. Not because you deny reality, but because you refuse to be hypnotized by it. You refuse to call the current scene the final scene. Because if the outer world is the last word, you become a victim. But if the outer world is an echo, then you become responsible in the most liberating way. Now let's do something gentle and powerful. Right here, early in this journey, I want you to leave a comment, not for the algorithm, not for the platform, but for your own soul. a small declaration that marks the moment you chose a new orientation. Comment this: I'm returning to my inner voice. Just that. If it's true, let it be simple, let it be yours. And now, let's go deeper. The imagination has been called the scissors of the mind. Not scissors that cut you, but scissors that cut through illusion. Scissors that cut through the clutter of inherited beliefs. Scissors that cut the rope of an old story and let it fall away. Because the old story is heavy, isn't it? The old story says, I need proof first. The old story says, I'll believe it when I see it. The old story says, other people get to have that, but I'm different. But the new story is not even a story. It's a position. It's an inner place you stand in. The position is this: I am awareness. I am the witness. I am the chooser. And from this stillness, I can imagine myself into a new state with the ease of putting on a garment. So you begin to imagine from the end, not imagining how you'll get there, not imagining the struggle, but imagining the fulfillment, the doneness, the feeling that it is already yours. And here is the key. You do not do this to make it happen. You do this because it is natural to you, because the inner state is your true home, and the outer world is simply the slow reveal. Everything unfolds by grace, meaning by the lawfulness of consciousness, by the intelligence woven into being. When you align with the end, life arranges the bridge. Incidents, meetings, impulses, timing, invitations, ideas. You won't have to force most of it. You'll simply find yourself moving. And if you wonder how you'll know the difference between forcing and flowing, listen to your body. Forcing feels tight. Flow feels quietly certain. Forcing argues. Flow knows. And right now you are standing at the threshold where you stop living as a reaction and begin living as a decree. Not a decree shouted into the world, a decree whispered into being. And the light will shine upon your ways. But what if the reason your manifestations feel delayed isn't time at all? What if it's the version of you keep returning to when no one is watching? And what if tonight you could change that version in one single inner moment? There is a self you meet every day in the quiet spaces, between conversations, between tasks, between distractions. You meet this self when you wake up and no one has spoken to you yet. You meet this self when the lights go out and the world stops performing. You meet this self in the mirror of your own mind. And that self, whether you realize it or not, is the one giving instructions to your life. Not your goals, not your vision board, not your desperate affirmations, yourself. Because life doesn't obey what you occasionally desire. Life obeys what you consistently accept. So the question becomes almost intimate. What do you accept as normal? What do you accept as likely? What do you accept as just how it is? What do you accept as your identity? Some people accept struggle as normal. They don't even realize it's a choice. They call it realism. They call it adulthood. They call it life. They accept anxiety as the background music, like a fan humming in the corner that's been running so long they forgot silence exists. Others accept being overlooked. They accept being second. They accept being the one who helps everyone else win while their own life remains on hold. They accept postponement as virtue. And the subconscious, the faithful servant, says yes. Not because it hates you, because it loves you with perfect obedience. This is why there is no shame here, no condemnation, only revelation. Because the moment you see it, you are no longer trapped in it. You were never trapped by circumstances. You were trained into a state, and states can be changed. Neville called it moving into a new state. Abdullah demanded it with fierce simplicity. He didn't coddle the old identity. He didn't negotiate with the doubt. He lived from the end and refused to come down. But here is what modern minds miss. Living from the end is not pretending. It is not delusion. It is not denying what you see. It is choosing what you are beneath what you see. Let's bring this into the body. Imagine you have been wearing a coat for years. It's heavy. It's familiar. It smells like your past. People recognize you by it. And one day you forget you're wearing it. You think the coat is your skin. So you keep saying, "This is who I am." But it isn't. It's just something you've worn for a long time. The coat is the old identity, the one who expects disappointment, the one who braces for loss, the one who believes they must fight to be chosen, the one who thinks love is earned through suffering, the one who equates worth with exhaustion. And then, in a quiet moment, you remember you can take it off. Not by force, not by war, by awareness. You become still. You notice the thoughts. You notice the reflexes. You notice the emotional habits. You notice the inner voice that speaks in inherited language. And you realize, I am the one who hears this, therefore I cannot be this. This is freedom, the simplest and most profound kind. Because once you realize you are the awareness, you stop being bullied by the mind. The mind becomes a tool again. Speech becomes an instrument again. And the world becomes responsive again. Now, from this place, you begin to see harmony where before you saw chaos. Not because the world suddenly became perfect, but because you stopped interpreting everything as a threat. You begin to notice, this conversation is connected, this idea is connected, this delay is connected, this random invitation is connected, this rejection is connected. The bridge of incidents doesn't always feel comfortable, but it is intelligent. And in the midst of it, you experience fulfillment, not only at the destination, but along the way. That's the paradox. When you live from the end, you do not postpone your life. You stop treating fulfillment like a prize. You let it become your atmosphere now. This is why some people manifest quickly. It's not because they're lucky. It's because they stop waiting to feel complete. They decide the inner completion first. Now let's talk about signal and noise, because this is where modern life fractures so many people. You are surrounded by information. Everyone has advice. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a method. Everyone has a warning. If you tried to follow all of it, you would become a scattered soul, spiritually bloated, emotionally thin, constantly consuming, rarely creating. So you must learn the sacred art of filtering. Noise is anything unrelated to your vision, and that's personal. One person's signal is another person's distraction. One person needs quiet, another needs community. One person grows through discipline, another grows through surrender. The answer is always, go within. Because the superconscious speaks in resonance. It speaks in calm knowing. It doesn't shout. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't say, you're running out of time. It says, this is yours. And here is a test you can use. If an idea arrives and it expands you, if it makes you feel more alive, more honest, more you, that's often signal. If an idea arrives and it contracts you, if it makes you feel small, panicked, ashamed, that's often noise or conditioning. This doesn't mean you never do hard things. It means you stop doing them from self-abandonment. You stop using hustle as a substitute for worth. And when you stop abandoning yourself, life starts meeting you differently. Now, I want to offer something gently, the way a friend might offer a glass of water without making it a big deal. If there is someone in your life, someone you love, who feels trapped in their own mind, someone who keeps saying they're too late, too broken, too far gone, and you felt a quiet nudge while listening to this, consider sharing this video with them, not as a lecture, as a gift, as a soft light placed on their doorstep, in case tonight is the night they remember who they are. Now, let's return, because we haven't yet touched the core mechanism, the decree. A decree is not yelling at reality. It is not demanding that the world change to soothe your fear. A decree is the calm announcement of identity. This is who I am. This is what is true of me now. And when you decree from the I at the top, pure awareness, you are not trying to make it happen. You are aligning with the pattern already held within you. This is why the teachings say the desire is already fulfilled in consciousness. The perfect picture exists. The seed exists. The blueprint exists. The 3D world is just the slow photograph developing in the darkroom of time. So you stop checking the mirror every 5 seconds asking, is it here yet? You stop digging up the seed to see if it's growing. You plant, you know, you live. And yes, the old mind will protest. It will flash old thoughts. Who are you to have that? What if it fails? What if you're disappointed again? Be realistic. And you don't fight it. You don't argue with it. You simply return to the stillness and say, that is a thought, and I am the one who sees it. You let it pass like weather, because the sky does not wrestle clouds, and you are the sky. But here's what almost nobody is told. The fastest way to collapse time isn't trying harder. It's refusing to identify with the version of you who keeps rehearsing the old future. And in the next movement of this journey, you'll feel exactly how to step out of that rehearsal without force. There is a rehearsal you do every day, often without realizing it. You rehearse disappointment by expecting it. You rehearse lack by scanning for what's missing. You rehearse rejection by bracing before you speak. You rehearse failure by imagining the what if as if it's prophecy. And then you call it anxiety, as if it's something that just happens to you. But anxiety is often imagination pointed in the wrong direction, imagination trained to serve an old identity. So the revolution is not stop imagining. You cannot stop imagining. Imagination is your nature. The revolution is to turn imagination into a sanctuary again, to make it a throne room instead of a courtroom. Here is what people think they need, a new technique. Here is what they actually need, a new self. Because techniques can be done by the old self and still produce old results. But a new self naturally produces new outcomes, the way a changed root produces a changed fruit. So how do you change self without forcing? You enter stillness, not as a chore, not as another thing to do, but as returning to what you already are beneath the mind's movement. Relax the body. Let the breath become unimportant. Allow the emotions to be present without naming them enemies, and rest as the witness. Now, from that witness you choose the end, not the middle, not the struggle, not the timeline, the end. And you don't choose it like someone begging, you choose it like someone remembering. You let the scene be small and sensory, a simple moment that implies fulfillment, a handshake, a message, a quiet morning in the home you wanted, the feeling of a ring on your finger, the sound of laughter in your kitchen, the relief in your chest as you open an account and see stability where chaos used to be. But the scene is not the power, the feeling is the power. Not emotion as drama, feeling as certainty, the inward, of course. That's what the wish fulfilled feels like. Not hype, not mania, peaceful ownership. And when you taste that ownership, even for a few seconds, something in the subconscious begins to rearrange, not through force, through acceptance, through impression, because the subconscious does not respond to what you want. It responds to what you accept as true now. Now we must go even deeper. Speech. You have been speaking spells your whole life, not mystical spells in a fantasy book, spells as repeated statements that shape identity. I'm always behind. Things never work out for me. I can't trust anyone. Money is hard. Love doesn't last. I'm not the kind of person who... Every repeated sentence is a decree. Every decree is a mold. And life faithfully pours itself into the mold you keep handing it. So when you begin to live from the end, your speech changes. Not because you police yourself, but because a new identity naturally speaks new language. You stop narrating your life as tragedy. You stop introducing yourself as a problem. You stop telling the old story like it's sacred scripture. And in the beginning, yes, the old habit will try to return. That's okay. You don't punish yourself for a reflex. You simply return again. Return is the practice. Return is the prayer. Return is the way you purify the mind, not by attacking it, but by withdrawing your identity from it. Now, somewhere around this point in the journey, you may notice something. You don't just want a dream life. You want a meaningful life. A life where you are in your place, your real place. Not someone else's life, not someone else's timeline, not someone else's costume. There is a place you are meant to fill, a role that is yours, not as duty, but as joy. Something you can do in a way no one else can, because no one else is you. And the tragedy of modern life is that people try to copy. They try to mimic the surface of someone else's success without entering their own pattern. They chase another person's how without receiving their own why. But when you go within, you begin to feel your own design. It might arrive as an unreasonable dream. It might arrive as an unattainable idea. It might arrive as a desire you've been hiding because it feels too big for your current life. And that is exactly why it is the message. Because the superconscious often speaks in expansions that frighten the conditioned self. It says, there is more for you. And the old identity says, be careful. It says, this is possible. And the old identity says, don't get your hopes up. And right here is a crucial fork in the road. Do you obey the old identity because it is familiar, or do you obey the inner knowing because it is true? Now I'm going to offer you something practical, but it will feel spiritual if you understand it. For the next 21 days, you can train a new state the way you train a muscle. Not by straining, but by consistency. By returning to the end again and again until the new identity becomes natural. That's why we created the 21-day challenge. It's available in the description or pinned comment. It's simply a container, a path, a daily return, not to force results, but to stabilize the inner eye until the outer world begins to reflect the new posture. And now, back into the journey, because the outer world will test you, not as punishment, as confirmation. It will show you old scenes, old echoes, old delays, old triggers, and you will be tempted to react as the old self. But this is where the teaching becomes living truth. Appearances are not final. They are feedback. When you see something that contradicts your wish fulfilled, do not collapse. Do not panic. Do not interpret it as failure. Interpret it as an invitation to remember who you are. An invitation to return to the single I. An invitation to stand in the end again. Because the moment you return, the bridge continues. The river flows. The unseen hands move. And you begin to notice something almost mysterious. When you stop obsessing over outcomes, outcomes come. When you stop chasing, you attract. When you stop trying to control every step, the steps appear. Because the law is not work harder. The law is be the one who already is, and the world will catch up. But what if the bridge of incidents isn't just arranging events? What if it's arranging you, shaping your reflexes, dissolving your old identity, until one day you wake up and realize the dream didn't arrive. You did. There comes a moment, sometimes it looks ordinary from the outside, when you realize the universe has been less interested in delivering a package to your doorstep and more interested in delivering you to yourself. Because the dream life you desire is not merely a collection of things, it's a state of being, a quality of consciousness, a way of walking through the world. And the bridge of incidents, yes, it moves money, relationships, opportunities, timing, and circumstance, absolutely. But it also moves the inner architecture of your life. It rearranges your assumptions. It challenges your reflexes. It exposes the hidden agreements you made with fear. And every exposure is mercy. You thought the delay meant denial, but the delay often means refinement. You thought the resistance meant not meant for you, but resistance often means you're approaching the edge of an old identity. When you are about to outgrow a version of yourself, everything that version believes will rise like a storm to defend its territory. Thoughts will get loud, doubts will get clever, old memories will start presenting themselves like evidence in court, and if you don't understand what's happening, you'll interpret that storm as truth. But if you do understand, you'll see it as the final trembling of a mask you no longer need. So in those moments, you do not wrestle with the mind. You do not chase clarity through panic. You return to the simplest power you have: I am. Not, I am worried. Not, I am trying. Not, I am hoping. Just, I am. The naked awareness behind all labels. This is why the ancient name of God is not a description. It is an identity beyond description. It is being itself. And that being is not separate from you. It is what you are before you attach yourself to any story. Now, from that I am, you choose a quality. You choose fulfilled. You choose loved. You choose provided for. You choose guided. You choose successful. You choose radiant. You choose free. And you do not choose it as someone trying to steal it from life. You choose it as someone remembering it was always yours. Here is the part that changes everything. You don't have to push the old self away. You don't have to hate your old patterns. You don't have to shame your past. You simply stop feeding it with identity. A thought appears. What if it doesn't work? And you answer, not with argument, but with placement. I am the awareness, and I live from the end. An emotion rises, fear in the chest, tightness in the throat. And you answer, not with suppression, but with allowance. You may be here, and I remain the sky. A circumstance shows up, a bill, a delay, a message that triggers the old story. And you answer, not with collapse, but with decree. This is not my final scene. My inner state is my truth. And as you do this, again and again, you begin to feel the purification Neville spoke of, the renewal Murphy pointed to, the fierce simplicity Abdullah embodied. Not as religious performance, as inner alignment. You begin to notice that the mind, once a restless animal, starts to soften. Speech becomes cleaner. Your inner conversations become less violent. The body begins to trust the future again. And the most beautiful part, you start seeing harmony. Harmony does not mean everything goes your way immediately. Harmony means you start seeing how things are woven, how nothing is wasted, how even what looked like detours were shaping you into the one who could hold what you asked for. You begin noticing opportunities the way a musician hears rhythm, not because you trained yourself to be positive, but because your consciousness is no longer hypnotized by lack. You see a conversation and you recognize a doorway. You see a setback and you recognize a redirection. You see a closing door, and you recognize protection. You see a sudden impulse. Call this person, apply for this, write this, go here, and you follow it naturally, without forcing, because it feels like your life moving through you. This is what it means for grace to act. Not magic that breaks laws, but lawfulness that reveals intelligence. Now I want you to imagine something very specific. Imagine you are walking at night along a coastline. The sea is dark, but it's alive. The wind is cool. The world is quiet enough that you can hear your own footsteps. And ahead, there is a lighthouse, tall, still, unwavering. Its beam rotates slowly, sweeping across the water, making the darkness briefly visible. That lighthouse is your awareness. It doesn't chase ships. It doesn't swim into the sea to rescue waves. It simply shines, and by shining, it reveals the way. When your inner eye becomes single, you become that lighthouse. Your life becomes guided not by panic, but by illumination. And the beam of that illumination is the state you occupy. Now, here is the truth that will feel like the final key, the hidden promise we hinted at in the beginning. The thing you think you're manifesting is not being dragged toward you from far away. It is being uncovered from within you. Because the fulfilled state already exists in consciousness. The perfect pattern already exists. The idea that is too good to be true is often the true you, knocking from the inside. And the reason it feels far is because you keep returning, subtly, habitually, to an inner identity that says, not yet. So what is the true work? Not effort, not force, not obsession. The true work is staying loyal to the fulfilled identity long enough that it becomes natural. And when it becomes natural, the world has no choice but to echo it. Now let me speak to the part of you that still doubts. The doubting part is not your enemy, it is your old protector. It learned to expect less so you would feel less pain. It learned to be realistic so you wouldn't be disappointed. It learned to shrink your desire so you wouldn't be seen, judged, rejected, or hurt. So don't hate it, thank it, and then lovingly retire it. Tell it quietly, you don't have to drive anymore, because the driver is awareness, the driver is the I, the driver is the one who chooses the state. And the state you are choosing now is not a desperate wish, it is your rightful posture. If you want to anchor this deeply, create a short inner decree, something you can return to without effort. Not 1,000 affirmations, one living sentence. For example, I am guided into my fulfilled life. I am the one who receives. I live from the end and life meets me there. I am the calm certainty of my desire fulfilled. Choose one that feels like your spine straightening when you say it. And when you walk through your day, let your attention naturally gather around what belongs to that identity. You'll notice you start choosing differently, speaking differently, moving differently. Not because you're pretending to be someone else, but because you're finally allowing yourself to be you. And if at any point the world feels heavy again, return. Return to the stillness. Return to the single I. Return to the end. Because your power is not in never falling. Your power is in returning without shame.